Good morning, everyone. This is Troy Graham. I am the Agronomy Division Manager with Augusta Co-op, and want to wish everybody a Happy New Year. And this is our January 2022 Road Report. And today we're going to talk a little bit about what we expect to see in our crop season, growing season of 2022. The growing season of 2021 was a challenging year, as everybody knows, and a lot of areas had the driest weather we've had since 1977. Obviously, our yields weren't great, but at the end of the day, they actually were a little better than everybody expected them to be in a lot of cases. So that was one, I guess, a good note to end on for the terrible dry summer. We got a lot of grass this fall, so grazing kind of rejuvenated and helped some folks kind of get through maybe some of the hay shortages that may be ahead for the winter. But again, we want to talk a little bit more about 2022 and some of the challenges we're going to face there. We don't know what the weather's going to be in 2022. Hopefully it's not as dry as it was this past year, but we are going to have some challenges that we know we're going to face. And the main challenge among many is high fertilizer prices. Anybody that's been in the ag industry for a while remembers 2008 and how high fertilizer prices were. These prices have topped some of those prices now. And, so how did we kind of get to the point where we are today? There's a lot of reasons, but there's some of those reasons are people know about. Some of them they don't. Natural gas prices are extremely high, especially in Europe. A lot of our nitrogen products are made overseas, and that has really driven up pricing. It's also cut production. Some of the plants in Europe that are creating nitrogen products have actually stopped production because of the cost of natural gas. They cannot make it pencil out, so they've either ramped down or stopped production. In the short term, they will start back up again this winter and start moving some product around, but it's one of the big reasons why we have increased nitrogen pricing. Another big reason is some lawsuits that have taken place in the market over the last 6 months. CF brought a lawsuit against some of the European companies claiming they were dumping product in the U.S. and effectively hurting prices. That lawsuit has been settled and really came out to be not very much in the way of repercussions actually on prices. It did affect a lot of the product coming in from Europe, and so there again creates somewhat of a shortage, which also helps to increase prices. And there's also more people in the world buying than there used to be. For instance, India is going to end up buying about 4 million metric tons. Sometimes they're buying that at one shot. So the market has had trouble kind of keeping up with some of these increased amounts from people that have normally not bought that much urea in years past. So there's not any more really new production or a lot of new production. So keeping up with some of these new increased orders has also put some pressure on the market as well. There's also been some weather events across the world that have caused some issues, some flooded mines, some things, plants being shut down, that kind of thing, which also helps to reduce some of that production. And one thing we fight pretty much every year, especially in the spring, but it's kind of been a real problem since COVID, is transportation, logistics of getting product moved from here to there. Trucks, rail cars, containers, all those things are short. And those prices have increased in some cases 3-4-fold for shipping. So when you add all those things together, then you end up with all these price increases. In some cases 75 to 100% increase from last spring. So it's something we're going to have to deal with as we move forward. And later on, we'll talk a little bit about how maybe we can manage around some of this on these fertilizer prices. And fertilizer is the main cost for inputs for crop production of any sort, whether it be hay, whether it be corn, soybeans. So that's a real problem we need to look at going into the spring of 2022. Another problem we've got is what's going on in the chemical market as well. Again, shipping and COVID concerns have caused some problems getting product out of China. This has been going on for basically 2 years, but we're really starting to see the effect of it now. Most of the active ingredient for a lot of the chemicals we use in ag is produced in China. And the inability to get those tech materials those active ingredients out of China is really causing a problem in some categories of chemical. You know, since it's hard to get them out, freight rates have gone extremely high, so that's also putting some pressure on pricing. And some of these problems are really real. Roundup is going to be extremely short this year, and that's a real problem. It's not made up. It's not an allocation to stop hoarding, which we'll talk about in a minute. This is a real issue. Some of the major brands of generics are not even going to be produced this year because of the inability to get the tech material that's needed. There's also a shortage on totes, jugs, 30-gallon drums. You know, so when you add all these things together, you know, not only is the tech material short, but even some of the containers they put it in is short, you know, at the plant to when it's packaged. So Roundup is going to be one we really need to pay attention to. You know, Augusta Co-op has done a good job. We saw this coming a long time ago through some help, some of the people that we do business with, and we ordered some Roundup really early. I think we're going to be in really good shape on material that goes through our machines to spray fields. We also have been able to get some package material. We're waiting on some more, and hopefully we can get that. So when I talked a little bit earlier about allocations, what does that mean? How does it affect chemicals? So some of the chemical companies have allocated chemicals. Basically what that means is that they know how much, for instance, Augusta Co-op sold last year, and they have allocated us that same amount for 2022. So in other words, what we sold in 2021, we've been allocated that amount of material for 2022. Does that mean all these chemicals are short? Not necessarily. I'm not saying these chemicals are plentiful, but I'm saying they're not short like the real issue we have with Roundup. What was occurring was as we came through last summer, the last growing season, and we started to see some of these issues starting to come up, people started to panic and started to hoard or panic buy. So when some of the chemical companies saw this and some of the examples of it, when they started getting orders and the amounts were 150% what they sold last year, they started to do some research and found out that people were just ordering from everyone, trying to make sure they got the chemical. So whatever that may be. And so what they did was, the chemical companies did, is they said, okay, we're going to allocate you to this amount that you sold last year to protect against some of this panic buying. You know, grass materials are going to be short, dual is going to be short, but a lot of the other stuff, I mean, when you start talking about their, you know, allocated chemicals, anywhere from grass material to range and pasture type chemicals, not all these chemicals are going to be that short. They're just trying to protect the supply from people hoarding them up and putting them in a warehouse somewhere and sitting on them. So that protects against, you know, folks not being able to get the chemical, plus some price gouging type things that you may see in the market. Again, some of these are going to be short. Dual, Roundup, some grass materials are going to be short. And we need to plan that way going into the season, especially if you do your own application, to make sure that you have the products that you need. If Roundup becomes a real problem, there are ways around that. There are other materials you can use to get the job done. Just may have to get a little creative with our tank mixes to make sure that we cover the crop's needs as far as herbicide goes. You know, so having said all that and all the issues that are out there right now, what can we do to help manage some of these problems? So the first thing I think we need to do is to really get back to the basics and look at kind of what our soil fertility is, you know, by soil samples, you know, look at some of our yield data and that sort of thing to try to help make some management decisions, especially early in 2022. You know, as we've talked to folks about doing their hay ground, you know, this early fertilization, most folks are putting on a pretty good chunk of fertilizer in the spring and pretty much putting their P&K on for the year in their spring application. I think this year may be a good idea to think about possibly just applying the fertilizer you need for your first cutting. And then once that first cutting's done, go back and look at pricing. I think you're going to see a different landscape price-wise once we get into May, June time frame. I don't think it's going to change a whole lot between now, January, and say April 1st. But I think we can just try to do what we need to do for spring and then come back and maybe do a second application. I think you'll save way more money than the application cost of doing a double application. The same thing with chemicals. You know, you need to make a plan on what your crop rotation is going to be. what you're going to plant, and what chemicals are you going to need to accomplish those goals as far as yield goes and herbicide needs. Do we need to, get our chemicals early? Do we need to kind of change our plan a little bit as far as being a little more creative in tank mixes and some things that we can make sure we get the weeds controlled and still be able to grow the crop? Yes, prices are going to be higher on chemicals, but again, chemicals are going to be a small increase compared to what fertilizer could be. I think we can look at actually what crops we grow. If you're growing corn for corn silage, for your beef cows or for your backgrounded calves or that sort of thing, maybe we think about switching that crop to a forward sorghum. Maybe we think about switching it to a summer annual, something that the seed cost is obviously cheaper and the fertilizer requirements are less. The chemicals are less requirements. So, you can save some money there and still be able to meet the tonnage goal or tonnage need that you have for your farm, be able to feed your livestock. There's some other things I think we can do as far as for contracting some prices on some of your grain crops. Prices right now are pretty good. They could obviously be better, but I think there's even with the prices we have now in fertilizer and chemicals and the prices we have in some of our commodities, corn especially, we can still manage and these things for a profit. I still think, are we going to get rich? No, we're not going to get rich, but I think we can make sure that we make a profit in 2022 and continue to farm. Again, same thing for corn. What we're putting on up front for corn and fertilizer, I think we need to look at just doing what we need to do to get that corn to the end of May, 1st of June, and top dress it then. If you don't put any potash on up front, I think our pricing structure may be a little different by then, and you can maybe add some potash over the top. All these things are possible to do, and some things that we can do to try to work around some of these prices and not have to pay these extremely high prices, really up front. Augusta Co-op, we've tried to communicate with customers about some of these issues and some things we think can be done to kind of manage around them. We sent out a newsletter. It was in homes January, first part of January into December, basically outlining what we talked about today. This letter is available on our website, augustacoop.com. Just look for our news feed. It's on there if you'd like to read it. Basically covers the same things we covered today. So I think, there's going to be a challenging year. We always have some sort of challenge in agriculture. It's never, all that easy. If it was, everybody would do it. But I think there's some ways we can work around some of these problems. And we are, every day we're watching these prices and trying to make sure that we're doing the right thing for our customers, make sure we have the products they need, can have the most competitive prices we can have in this environment. So we're doing our due diligence, trying to make sure that our customers have the products they need and we can help them make a profit in this environment this year. We are offering our prepay this year, as we always have. And that prepay on fertilizer and farm supplies is 8%, and that goes on until January the 8th. And then it's 6% after that until February 25th. We are not guaranteeing prices this year on either fertilizer or farm supplies. And I think the reason we're doing that is I think it's a safer bet for the farmer and for us. With prices this high, I don't think we need to lock ourselves in anything like this. There's not a whole lot of room for this stuff to go up, and there's sure a lot of room for it to go down. So, not saying that's going to happen, but I think it's a possibility. We've heard some rumblings and some talk of nitrogen products softening up in price a little bit. Don't believe phosphorus and potash will do so, at least by April. May, June, maybe looking at something totally different. But that prepay is still available, still a really good deal. If you look at it in a kind of on a yearly basis, it's about 24% interest, considering you use that money, in about 3 or 4 months. So it's a really good deal. We're going to continue to do that. We also want to remind everyone on February 4th, which is a Friday, we're having our Customer Appreciation Day, Agronomy Customer Appreciation Day, excuse me. It will be held at our Verona warehouse on Lower Hill Road. Invitations will be going out for that as well. We'll be having pulled pork and fried oysters as usual. Hope we can see as many of you out there as can make it. We'll do it from like 10 to 2 to kind of accommodate everybody's schedule around feeding and that sort of thing. So we really hope to see everybody there. We'll have a few of our vendors there. If you want to talk to them and ask questions, there'll be no presentation, there'll be none of that kind of thing, but we'll have a few folks there if you'd like to talk to them, pick their brain a little bit about their products or about what's going on in the industry this year. It'll be a good time to do that. Also want to remind everybody about Vendor Day. Most customers that have been dealing with Augusta Co-op for any period of time know what meant about our Vendor Day. That's where we have all of our vendors are actually there. You can talk to them about their products, do orders, be the best prices of the year on a lot of those products. And it'll be everything from animal health to seed to farm supplies, power tools, you name it. So we'll have it there. We've always had our Vendor Day and we're at the Weir's Cave Community Center. We're changing the location this year. We want to make sure everybody knows about this. It's going to be at the Augusta Co-op, Augusta Co-op, at the Augusta Expo in Fishersville at the multipurpose building. If you've been to the Market Animal Show in recent years, it's where the show ring is. It'll be in that building. There'll obviously be lots of signs. There's a tremendous amount of parking. So we hope to see everybody there. Like I said, we'll have some of the best prices on products this year at that event. Again, we just wanted to kind of go over some of the things that we're going to face in 2022, some of the challenges. Some of these things are pretty real and we need to be planning for them and around them. We'll be glad to help do that in any way we can. Like I say, we're already doing a lot of things behind the scenes to try to make sure we have the things we need and that our customers need. And feel free to give us a call, any of the field staff, myself, Mark Weekly, and we'd be glad to discuss that with you and see if there's something we can do to help to try to mitigate some of these risks going into spring here and into planting season. You know, that's going to be here before you know it. Already January. We'll be doing some small grain work in February, towards the end of February, and hay ground in March. So we're getting closer than we were for sure. So we appreciate the business and hope that we can continue to help you in 2022. And thank you for your time. And this is Troy Grimm, Agronomy Division Manager, Augusta Co-op, with the January 2022 Road Report.